Welcome back to Rev It Up Bowling. My name is Jason Robarsh, and today we have an arsenal review for you. What I want to do today is review what my tournament or my house shot arsenals are. We've had some comments on how to build an arsenal, but more specifically, what's in my arsenal. I have some of the bowling balls right here. I have 8 of them, and I picked these because they're pretty well rounded. Most of these I will take to tournaments as well. A couple of them are just for house shot, but in general, I bring all of these to tournaments. We can see we have a collection of bowling balls. Urethane, high-end Asymmetrics, a little bit lower-end Symmetrics. Building a tournament arsenal, we'll start with the tournament arsenal. I typically try to locally bring 6, maybe 8 balls to a tournament, at most. I always start with my benchmark. Now, my benchmark ball is not here. I took it to nationals and it's still sitting at home, but that is the Sneak Attack Solid. The Sneak Attack Solid, for me, is smooth, predictable, and it's a little bit lower end ball just because I'm a little bit higher rev rate. But in general, I know what it does. It's very smooth, controllable as I mentioned, and it's versatile, which is great. I know that even if it doesn't line up, which is totally okay, I'm going to figure out what the lane is giving me with that given bowling ball. In the 9 balls, I don't have the Sneak Attack here. The Sneak Attack will be my benchmark ball. As you can tell, my benchmark ball is not my strongest ball. If we were gonna go 1 to 9 by strength, I guess you could say, a lot of people like to categorize balls like that. Me personally, I like to categorize balls by ball shape. Starting with front to back, going left to right, with the idea of there's gonna be less oil as they go more left to right. Front to back, urethane. I have a black hammer here. I personally throw the purple as much as I can, but I do enjoy the black hammer. I always try to keep a urethane in my tournament arsenal. I don't throw any at all, but I always try to keep a urethane at least in my tournament arsenal, especially if I go outside. It's just one of those shapes you can't replicate, or it's extremely hard to replicate. I don't want to be leaving the state without this shape, which is a smooth front to back early rolling shape. Typically, a lot of people throw it on a shorter pattern. So urethane, always in my bag. Going to my next bowling ball for heavier volumes, maybe fresh, would be the Max Bias. Now, the Max Bias is a newer bowling ball. I haven't thrown in any tournaments yet, but the shape is what I like. When I try to pick balls, I go by shape. I don't go by, I need a pearl symmetric that's whatever. I'll look at RG and differentials and all that stuff. But when I'm picking a tournament arsenal, I strictly go off of ball shape. This ball is very front to back and it reads pretty early. It's a great complement to the black hammer or purple urethane. This ball I can keep in front of me, and typically it should smoothen out the lane quite a bit, especially on a fresher shot where maybe there's less ratio, less forgiveness. I can throw something like this and I'll keep the angles. My second ball, again, is a front to back bowling ball, but typically gonna be stronger, like an ASYM. If you're talking about the Conspiracy, Black Widow 3.0, something like that. A little bit more front to back of a shape. Now, those bowling balls and this ball can create different shapes, but for this particular shape, it is a smoother front to back, early rolling bowling ball. I got that one. My next ball, which is a little bit more versatile, is the hitter. Now, the hitter, and as you can tell on some of these bowling balls, this ball came out a year ago. This obviously urethane, but it came out a little while ago. The Endeavor came out a little while ago. I don't have the newest of new stuff in my bag. The reason for that is if something works, I like to keep it. If they discontinue a ball, that's one thing. But typically what I try to do is if I enjoy that shape, I know it's gonna make that shape. If I drill a ball and it's comparative, I might think about replacing it with that given ball. But for the most part, sensor solid, stuff like that, the Sneak Attack Solid, it's okay to throw older equipment. Now, do they have many games on them? No. I mean, maybe the hitter does now, but I might buy another one to refresh it. But if I like a shape, I'm going to probably try to keep it. This given shape, a little bit more of a left to right, is a pin down layout, but it's a little bit smoother upon transition. It's a little bit more continuous than my Max Bias, for sure more continuous than my Max Bias. But what this shape gives me is still a little bit more of a front to back, still for higher volumes. But if I do need to start belling the ball, send it right a little bit, open the lane up some, this would be a good ball for it. Typically, I keep it with some surface. Maybe at most, I'll go all the way up to 3,000. But for the most part, this is what I'm gonna throw for that higher volume, maybe a little bit more left to right, maybe scooching into the second, third arrow. But this ball in general is quite versatile. I threw this at a tournament here last year. I threw it all 9 games. I was able to get deep with it. For me, this is like my versatile ASYM that I can play all throughout the lane with, but again, a little bit more left to right, but again, it's still an ASYM, still a solid, still provides me a smoother front to back shape. Got that one. All right, on to the last ASYM. It's not like I go, fresh is always an ASYM or whatever the case may be. I'm just going by ASYMs and the Sims really for the most part, but for the most part it's hook potential. The effect. Out of my ASYMs, this is gonna be one of my most left to right balls in my tournament arsenal. I will do a little shout out to the Beyond Infinity, my bad. I will give a shout out to the Beyond Infinity. I usually have that in the tournament arsenal. It just all depends. If I'm here in town, there's a lot of friction. I might take out something like the sensor and throw another pearl in there or something with less surface. But for me, this is gonna be probably my most versatile ASYM. For heavy volumes, for fresh, maybe not, maybe a little too clean, but the effect, it is a pearl. Most people think it's gonna be skid flippy, but this ball has some solid characteristics to it. It's quite mid-laney, pretty smooth, and I did do a half weaker layout-ish. Smooth, but early, it makes sense. But this would be when the heads start breaking down. These balls, just with the given surface, or maybe just picking up too early, and I need to get the ball further down lane, but I don't need it to just take a left turn when I get there. This is the ball for it. It is an ASYM, does like to lay off the pocket or roll a little bit more forward, but in general, if I'm looking for something that's cleaner through the heads and that can control the pocket, meaning less continuation, more front to back as far as when it comes off the end of the pattern, this would be the ball for it. Probably my second favorite ball in my bag outside my sneak attack solid. I love that ball. The effect, phenomenal release by hammer. I'll be owning a few of these. All right, to the Symmetrics. All right, between these two bowling balls, core is much bigger than this. Cover is just as aggressive as this one. For the most part, I have these two bowling balls. Depending on the surface, Game Breaker 5, if I have some surface on it, it's a little bit more front to back. Again, still symmetric, still likes to continue a little bit on the back end. But this is gonna give me a sneak attack solid on steroids shaped. Hooks a little bit more, maybe a little bit more mid-laney, and a little bit smoother off the spot. This is gonna be like my banana shape, my overall well-rounded ball shape for fresh and even into transition. One of the ways I like to categorize some bowling balls is when I think I'm gonna probably throw them. If it's a fresh pattern, more than likely I'm not throwing the Scorpion Strike. That's gonna be more of a transition into burn bowling ball. This is gonna be a fresh into transition bowling ball. And most of these are like a fresh into transition. This one's a transition into burn. This one's a transition into burn. And I do also have a burn ball, but I don't throw it crazy often, especially in house settings, more the last couple games of a tournament for the most part. So this ball, more banana shape. It's more fresh, maybe into transition, depending on what surface I have on it. But for the most part, this is gonna be my smooth benchmark plus shape. If the sneak attack I see is just getting a little too far down lane, it's just not picking up the mids enough, I'll ball like this. The sensor solid, usually I don't typically have the sneak attack, this and this in the same bag. They fit together, but it might be just too similar. I love the sensor solid. The reason why I brought it out here, core is a little bit weaker in it. I feel like it's not as mid lane as strong, but it still provides an extremely smooth shape. This is a little bit less than the GB5. The sensor solid, in my opinion, reacts very similar to the Game Breaker. However, it is a little bit weaker core. I think it hooks a teensy bit less. It's one of those balls where if I still need a read, if this is at 1,000 or 1,500, but it's just too much ball, I know I can go to this thing and it's gonna be a little bit less of a hook. The sneak attack solid would be after these two. Again, a little cleaner down lane, but still extremely smooth. And the reason I like the sneak attack over these ones is I'd rather see my ball not hook than overhook. When my ball overhooks, I have a tendency of moving left too quickly. I would rather see my ball underhook. That's why the sneak attack tells me if I need to go down or up in ball choices. All right, the Endeavor. This is my transition into burn. This is a ball that I don't ever throw on fresh, and I really don't ever throw it on house. This needs some friction to work. I did do a pin in ring layout. For me, that needs some friction for sure to transition. For me, this is a ball where I might not technically be lofting the gutter caps or anything, but I will be using it when the heads start blowing up and I need something smoother off that friction. If I need something, now the hook potential of these two are very similar. If I need something that's on transition that pops more off the friction, a little bit more skid flippy, this one sees the friction is pretty smooth off of it. Transition's a little slower because of that layout. With this one having a little bit more of a pin-up layout, again, still a pearl, this responds quicker. If I need more recovery, this thing wiggles, maybe do a 210 or something like that, I know I can switch to this one, which is the replacement to my Ethos, which was a phenomenal bowling ball. But I felt like sometimes it's a little too smooth off transition, friction, and I need something that pops more. I went with a fresh cover stock and a pin-up layout to do that. But this is gonna be more of my skid flippy ball. It was still pretty strong bowling ball. Transition into burn still, but it's definitely not a burn ball. My burn ball is typically a sneak attack solid. Now it's probably gonna be the Rattler. And typically what I like to do on those is create a very smooth shape, because there's so much friction out there. I can get away with like a pin down layout because it's just gonna blend off that friction. So for the most part, that is my tournament arsenal. Again, we can see that there are several different shapes and several different surfaces you can see on these bowling balls. Some are a little dirty, I apologize. But you got a compound, you got like a 2000, you got 1000, and obviously with urethane, it's probably 500 or 1000. Sneak attack's usually at 2000. Do your tournament arsenal. Think about more of the shapes. Don't think about more of like, this ball hooks more, this ball hooks less, this ball hooks less than that, this ball hooks less than that one. Think of it more as ball shapes. Because for the most part, when we create good ball motion, it's always gonna look relatively the same, depending on what you're bowling on. If you're bowling on a house pattern, you want your ball to pick up somewhere around 40, 42 feet. But as the lanes transition, this ball could start going, I could start hooking early. Now it's hooking at 36 feet, right? Now we got to go do something with a cleaner cover stock to get it down lane a little bit more. But for the most part, once we find that shape, we're just trying to replicate it. But the lanes are changing. We need to change our equipment accordingly. Having different shapes in your bag will help. Not necessarily meaning you want to play 50 feet and a skid flip, because that's what, depending on the layout, or depending on the lane, that's what this will do. It's the lane's transitioning. I need to complement that lane with that given bowling ball to make that specific shape. All right, on to house shot. House shot, I like to keep things pretty simple. I throw a lot of bowling balls on house. It's where I do a lot of my testing is just league. I mean, I practice, I do YouTube, I bowl league, I bowl tournaments. The only thing I care about is really tournaments when it comes to scoring. For me, I use league as a test on some of these balls. Right now, my absolute favorite league ball is the Effect. Don't get me wrong, it is strong. However, as far as overall hook potential, however, it does give me a cleaner, smoother ball shape. The lanes here get very cliffed, get it in a little bit, goes 60 feet, get it right quick, takes the left turn. With this type of bowling ball, it's an ASYM. If I get it right quick, it will like to hopefully hold off the pocket some. It's gonna roll more forward because of the ASYM. Symmetrics can just hit that friction and just keep going left. Right now, I enjoy this ball. If I get it inside on all that oil, the core is big enough to get it rolled over into the pocket. If I get it right, the core is, again, big enough to just burn the energy and not take a left turn. A lot of pin down layouts can help with that too. Right now, the Effect is a phenomenal ball for me. Some other balls that I've done really well with, GB5, I shot 299 with that. I think the first day I had it. This is again, a smoother bowling ball. When you're trying to build a tournament arsenal, especially, and when I say house shot arsenal, when I say house shot, most people are gonna wanna bring 6 balls in a league. Nor I don't think you should. For the most part, you should be bowling on about the same shot you do every single week. With, depending on temperature, maybe the oiling machine was not spinning out the right oil, whatever the case may be. It's gonna be pretty simple differences. It's not gonna be outrageous. So you're not going from a long pattern to a short pattern or whatever. I bring something that's an ASYM that can help me hold the pocket off. ASYMs like to roll forward a little bit more. I will use something like this in order to control that pocket while I'm playing a little deeper. If I feel like this ball is getting a little too far down lane, or it's storing too much energy and popping off the spot a little too much because of the shinier cover stock, I'll go to something with a little bit more surface. That could be the hitter. I threw the Black Widow 2.0 quite a bit in league as well. or the Game Breaker. For the most part, when I try to pick a house shot arsenal, usually I'm going for very, very smooth shapes, especially how clipped it is here, and I have a lot of rev rate. The Effect, the GB5 have done really, really well for me. Other ASYMs have done well. I threw the 3.0 a little bit, but I had to get pretty deep with it. I don't typically like throwing that aggressive of a bowling ball just because I have to move deep that quickly. It screws the lane up a little bit. So yeah, the Effect, the GB5, sneak attack a little bit. But for the most part, when you build your house shot arsenal, have 3 very distinct shapes in your bag, but in general, they complement you and your house shot well. If your house shot is super, super slick and it does a lot of carry down, first couple shots look good, and all of a sudden it starts pushing down lane, all that oil's going down lane, maybe you're gonna need a little bit more surface or quicker response. If oil starts going down lane a lot during transition, you might wanna go to higher end bowling balls that are a little bit quicker responding, just to help it make the corner. If you feel like your house shot hooks just a ton, there's no volume out there, you're probably gonna have to have a little bit lower end of an arsenal to complement your shot. But for the most part, your 3 bowling balls should be distinct from each other, but complement what you're bowling on pretty well. I would say put your benchmark ball in there, your most comfortable ball. Throw maybe something with some polish. If it's a stronger bowling ball, great. If it's a weaker bowling ball, fine, depending on what you're bowling on. And then throw something definitely a little stronger in there. If that's gonna be like a Blackberry 3.0, if you're a little rev rate, or maybe there's a lot of volume, or maybe something like the Hazmat Solid, where it is higher volume, but you just don't need that much ball. That will work well as well. So yeah, again, picking out your house shot arsenal. Again, most comfortable ball, then probably get something a little shinier than that, and then something pretty strong to go below that. You can go up or down from there. For the most part, that is how I set up my house shot stuff. I throw a lot of stuff in house shot I shouldn't throw in house shot, but again, house shot for me is practice. I'll be throwing whatever comes out. If it's the Scorpion Sting, if it was league time right now, I'd probably try to throw it, stuff like that for sure. I have certain bowling balls I only have 6 games on, really. 3 6 games. Those are bowling balls that don't necessarily fit me as a bowler for house shot or sports shot, or they're too like niche. Like the Hammer New was a little too niche for me. I threw it on house shot, I did okay. But for me, it was one of those balls that it works when it works for sure, but I just don't see it work very often. I want more variety in my bag. That was the overview on what I'm currently building, how I currently built it. And these bowling balls are always interchangeable. Again, I think ball shape, depending if I'm bowling in Alaska or bowling the low 48. For instance, like this ball, it worked well one of these tournaments up here, that when I went down and bowled the regional in Arizona, I noticed that the lanes reacted pretty similar. They had a higher friction, and I needed something that was a little smoother, but was still continuous. I threw the hitter, and between the hitter, the archetype, I was able to win a regional. That worked pretty well there. So it depends on where I'm bowling. Nationals, at South Point especially, I don't see as much friction as I do here. So I brought 6 pin underballs for this time. Wasn't the right move. Luckily, I got out of there fine and I bowled well. But next year, I'll definitely need to bring some pin-up stuff just to see the lane a little bit better. So yeah, that's how I build an arsenal. If you guys have any questions on what I'm currently throwing, why I throw it versus something else, just let me know. Again, my tournament arsenal doesn't change as much as my house shot arsenal, because I throw a lot of new stuff for a house shot. But if I like the shape and I think it's a shape that fits the tournament bag, I'll look to maybe add or replace something I already have. But for the most part, when I find something that works, a shape that I enjoy, I try to keep that in my tournament arsenal as much as possible, just because it's consistent to me and I know what it does every single time. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, please let us know. If you guys like this video, please leave a like. And the most important thing is please remember to subscribe. We have a lot of viewers, it seems like, but our subs are at 5,000. So if we can bump those sub numbers up, we would appreciate it for sure. Outside of that, yeah, no, this was fun. We're gonna be trying to do this maybe once a month, or if there's a significant change to my tournament arsenal, just to give you guys an illustration on why I'm doing what I'm doing and give you some some background on what I do, and you can look like, oh, he said this 3 months ago and now he's saying this. It's like, well, why? Oh, there's more friction, they're laying out less volume, etc., etc. With that said, my name is Jason Rovarsh. This is Rev.Bowling. Much love, peace.